Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of 9 to 5 Nerds with Robert Swathwood, Katrina Swathwood,
Hello,
Alan Berserker,
Hello.
and our guest this week is Matt Dunford.
You let that dork on the show? Why?
Yeah, right? Did I pronounce the name right?
Yeah, Matt Dunford.
Matt Dunford.
Yeah.
I have to start this out by saying that I have no clue how I haven't run into you before.
That's odd because it's weird how I haven't run into you either because, I literally end up everywhere because I'm always at every store, every convention, every event, and that sort of thing. And your face isn't one that I actually have bumped into despite us living in the same town. So that's kind of crazy.
Live in the same town. I go to SoCal Comics. Mm-hmm. I go to Society.
Yeah.
I've been to...
I was there at both of them today.
Lucky. Yeah, I get to live through your posts because I have kids. I can't go to the comic book stores all the time like I used to.
Yeah, and I've just got the dad bod, so
Yeah,
it works the same thing, right?
Hey, I saw the pictures of you as Hobo Spider-Man, and
that was a whole lot of fun.
Rocking the costume. So we'll talk about Comic Fest a little bit first, and I have to say I'm embarrassed, but I have not gone yet.
How dare you?
I know. I've been trying to go for the last couple of years. I've been trying.
Things happen.
Yeah, with kids, it's soccer and baseball and all this.
Tryouts.
Yada,
Active
yada, yada.
things, non-nerd things. You call yourself a 9 to 5 nerds, and you can't make the commitment to show your kids that geeking out is the most important thing.
Oh,
He's got a point,
get
dude.
plenty of it.
Yeah. Well, my oldest name is Parker, after Peter Parker. So there's that. Our youngest is Oliver, who's after Oliver Grayson, which is Invincible.
Oh yeah.
Parker's middle name is Grayson, and Oliver's middle name is Riley for Ben Riley. So
Okay, good. It's like you're a 90s Spider-Man kid like me, so I can relate to that.
absolutely. How old are you?
I'm 33.
Okay, I'm 34. Alan's 35. We're all pretty close there in age. So yes.
I've got a Ben Riley poster on my wall that's been hanging there since January 96.
Oh, geez.
Wow.
I got it laminated when it first came out, the Dan Jurgens and Klaus Janson one, and so it's cool because I've become friends with Klaus over the years. It's like, okay, cool. I still got your poster on my wall. It's like, I wish I could have you autograph it, but it's laminated.
That's funny.
I mean, what kind of dorky dweeby kid laminates his posters? But I should probably get in the habit of that because, all my prints get damaged and whatnot, but that's the one that still holds up 23 years later.
It's either that or
nuts.
frame it. Yeah,
Well, when you're a kid, you're not thinking
Yeah.
about framing something.
of course not. That's what old
I
people
just
do.
want to look
Yeah.
at it all the time and admire how Ben Riley, he's going to be the greatest Spider-Man forever and ever. And then October 31st, 1996 happened. No! He turned into dust before it was cool.
Yeah, that's true. I have the 92 for the it was 92 or 93 for the 30th anniversary. How they had all the 4 different hologram covers. They released a 4 poster of all 4 holograms, and I've had that since it came out.
I wasn't familiar with the poster, but the thing is, how I got into comics back in the day.
That's what I was going to actually ask you.
Yeah, your next question. How did I get... You're probably going to ask, how did I get into comics? And, of course, it actually relates to what you're saying.
Yeah.
So, anyone who knows me knows I've told this story a bazillion times, but now I get to tell it before your audience. Before I was into superheroes and junk, as a child, I had an obsession with pirates. Sounds weird. I know.
No.
What inspired that?
I watched
Yeah.
Peter Pan like
Okay.
300 times a day, as normal children do. And I would beg my parents to go to Disneyland so I can go on Pirates of the Caribbean, back when it was like cool, before Johnny Depp ruined everything. And, well, they're finally taking him out now. So
Are they?
he got into some
Okay.
not so good things. So that maybe desecrating history is a bad idea here. So, but... And amongst other things, Lego Pirates were my favorite toys. Mm-hmm. So I really enjoyed these Lego Pirates. And I just played with them all the time. And one day my parents got me a set that came with this comic in it. Captain Redbeard and the Gold Medallion. I'm like, oh, this is awesome. Wait, they have little bubbles that say they're saying stuff. Mom, read this to me. Dad, read this to me. Mom, read this to me. Dad, read this to me. My parents got very fed up with reading me this comic nonstop, day in and day out, to the point where they actually just taught me to read so I could actually read it for myself. And they noticed I responded really well to reading this, so they said, let's take him to Toys R Us, get him some children's books. So what happened there is they take me to Toys R Us, and of course the year is 1992. I'm 6 years old, just having learned to read, and we're walking through an aisle, and something shiny catches my eye. And I look at it, and I walk to it, and it's this shiny holofoil cover of a Spider-Man comic. It's a collection of 30 Spider-Man comics to celebrate the 30th anniversary of Spider-Man, which encompassed those 4 holographic covers. And I said, Dad, I need this, I need this, I need this. And within that set was my introduction to a character named Spider-Man. So in that first issue I read, I believe it was the spectacular issue where Harry Osborn kidnaps Peter and then Liz and little Normie and sits down.
That super awkward dinner.
That super awkward dinner scene, the Sal Buscema one. And like, it's just, I mean, I'm just learning these characters for the first time. And I'm like, okay, wait, these guys used to be best friends, but now they're worst enemies? Okay, he killed his dad, and now he holds him responsible for that. And within that first issue, I was just hooked on Spider-Man. And then it had a poster inside, which was the Charles Vess black costume Spider-Man chasing Hobgoblin across the New York skyline. I still have that hanging in my room.
Nice.
It's a little on the beat-up side. It was really great at the 2009 Comic-Con when I finally got to meet Charles Vess because he came out as a guest. And I said, you know, I still have this. And, of course, wow, that was 10 years ago. And it's just so nice to actually, you know, finally meet the people that inspired your childhood. And then, of course, I became a very strong Spider-Man reader, picking up every Spider-Man book in sight. If we were at 7-Eleven back in the day, I would just, you know, get those Spider-Man issues. And so within that set, it was, you know, my introduction to, like, Eric Larson stuff, like Fight of the Tri-Sentinel, and then Blood Rage or whatever those bad villains were. Some early, you know, Spider-Man, Todd McFarlane stuff in there. So it's a lot of early 90s mix of things. Yeah. And so J.M. DeMatteis, Tom DeFalco, and those guys who were, you know, coming on board. But then, of course, I read them recreationally. But it was on November 19th, 1994, that my Spider fandom went into overdrive. That was the day that the Spider-Man animated series premiered. That first episode, Night of the Lizard, by John Semper and Jerry Conway, blew my mind. Just being an 8-year-old boy and witnessing that, and that moment, and just begging my parents to take me to Toys R Us so I could get Spider-Man toys. And I got my first 2 toys, which were Web Shooter Spider-Man, because I didn't want Web Slinger Spider-Man, because he had fixed arms up like this, and you couldn't play with that. Mm-hmm. And I got Kingpin because he was the biggest. I was always one of the big figures. The big ones were cool. And you could just pick up another figure and slam them down. I had so much fun. And you can bet that my Christmas list that year was filled with nothing but Spider-Man toys, Maximum Carnage for Super Nintendo, and all that stuff.
That red cartridge.
Red cartridge. Sega, I got the red cartridge. I got the red cartridge.
Green Jelly did the soundtrack for that game, I believe, right?
Oh, yeah. Green Jelly. That was awesome.
My all-time favorite toy, which I've recently picked up again, was the Amazing Spider-Man, or the Spider-Man cartoon, the Venom one, where the mask is rubber.
Oh, yeah, Venom Series 2, where it takes it off and it's got the flat top.
Yeah, exactly. That was my all-time favorite toy. I used to play with it because I would get up early and I'd watch that cartoon every weekend on Saturday. And
it was my life.
It was the best. And as a big Venom fan when I was a kid, I was always hoping, you know, is this a Venom episode? Is this a Venom episode? And I remember taking that mask off, and at some point moving, I lost it. And maybe 4 or 5 years ago at Comic-Con, I was walking by one of the booths at the edge, and they had like 6 Spider-Man in that purple card with the the web shoot, and I was like, that's Venom, and it was only $40. I was so excited to pick that back up.
Yeah, I mean, I had every single last one of them, and it was so fun at Comic Fest this year because I invited my dad to come out. And as we're walking through the hall, because my dad has always been a guy who was very supportive of me and my geeky endeavors. He would buy me the comics and the video games and let me watch the cartoons, but never really a guy who understood them. And this year at Comic Fest, as we're walking around, I was like, hey, Dad, hold up for a sec. I want you to meet someone. Dad, this is John Semper. He's the creator of the Spider-Man cartoon. So if you need someone to blame for all those trips to Toys R Us back in the day, this is the guy. And then John talked with my dad about his career in animation for, becoming the first black showrunner, getting the gig running a cartoon named Fraggle Rock, given it to him by a little-known guy named Jim Henson.
Yeah.
And then working throughout the 80s for, another guy named Stan Lee, and then another guy for some other animation projects with a guy named George Lucas. I don't know if you know these guys.
But nobody important.
No, just, nobodies, And just his story about how John got on Spider-Man as basically, being at a party with Stan and James Cameron. James Cameron picked up the rights to the Spider-Man film in 1992. And then Avi Arad, who is the mogul behind Toy Biz, which basically owned Marvel at the time, so he pulled the strings on everything. Say, I'm going to start up a toy line. But you have to make all the characters, except for Electro and Sandman, they are off limits because they're in the movie. So that's why you didn't see Electro and Sandman. Actually, well, you did see Electro later on in Six Forgotten Warriors.
After the things were released, right?
After the movie fell apart. And then Stan actually suggested John, but they said, we're going to go with this other guy from Batman the Animated Series, since that's, running really hot right now. But then a couple months in, that fell apart. And then John was asked by Stan to come in, and Stan said, John, would you save the project? Will you save the project? But I've lost all this lead time. I don't have actors. I don't have writers. I don't have to. And so John took the reins and just basically just hammered out a show. He hired writers, artists, storyboarders. And the truth is, he saved the series. That man saved the series and produced something, and he had Avi Arad breathing down his neck the entire time, because Avi was saying, we need to get this cartoon out before Christmas season. If we do not have something to promote by the Christmas season, we lose all these Christmas toy sales. So that's why they only did that one episode, the special sneak preview, Night of the Lizard, November 19th, 1994. And what did it do? It put us kids into overdrive, and we filled up our toy lists for Christmas with Spider-Man toys.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It worked.
Marketing at its best.
Yeah. Marketing at its best, but the main series did not start until February 95.
I have the worst memory. Like, I remember the show. I remember it being my favorite show and watching that and X-Men and stuff, but I don't remember it premiering in November and then not being on again until February.
So you would have been in the 5th grade.
Yeah, I mean, it's well enough for me to have remembered, but my memory is just so trash that...
As you can imagine, I've got quite the memory. People say, how many times have you seen this series? You must watch it all the time. I've seen every episode once and then maybe a rerun here and there, but that's it. I just remember it because it was my life.
Yeah. Yeah, I just watched, and it's kind of cool that I just watched the first, 8 to 10 episodes with the kids, and it was like... The first
Oliver was into it.
The first one, yeah. My youngest, he's.
Is there a spot where you can watch them legally now? Because I can use a refresher. Because the biggest problem with that, I understand. It's not like I'm advocating for illegal watching, but the thing is, the cartoon Marvel, the way John says it every year with me, he had such free reign over that show. It's like, okay, let's use the Spider-Man stuff. Let's do an X-Men crossover. Let's do this and do that and do a Fantastic Four. He had free reign over the Marvel Universe because this is a show that premiered before the bankruptcy of Marvel, and then Marvel having to sell off movie rights to different studios. So now nobody wants to play fair over these characters. They could just not do anything with it. It's just like they just can't agree on the rights. So maybe someday, if everyone agrees to play nice, I would love to have a Blu-ray release, and I would be the first in line to buy it.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. But unfortunately, because these characters are owned by different studios and different properties and all over the board...
Who's going to get paid?
Yeah.
Well, they have released a couple of them legally, right? Like they have the Green Goblin...
Yeah, there's a couple. There's a couple DVD sets out there
that have small story arcs.
And overseas, there are some collected editions. I find it's got actually an incredibly big South American following. All these people from South America message me to talk about it. I'm like, really? Am I the guy you associate most with this show?
Why not?
Okay, maybe it's because I remember it better than the people who actually created it. But it's something that's so passionate with me about, and so I'm happy that I get to celebrate the 25th anniversary of it at Comic Fest this year. But of course, we've got other stuff that we're doing at Comic Fest. It's not just about Spider-Man. This is just my personal fanboy thing. And of course, as chairman of the event, it's my 3rd year as chairman. And I'll talk a little background about San Diego Comic Fest out there for people who may not be familiar with the event. So, of course, San Diego Comic-Con started back in 1969 with basically a group of kids. And to the people who started San Diego Comic-Con was one of the guys, a 15-year-old boy named Mike Towery, and Richard Alf, who ran the local comic and magazine store. And these group of kids, this group of 15-year-old kids, they thought to themselves, wouldn't it be great if there was other people out there that like comics? What if we were to get together and put together an event that gets, all these people and other fans like us, and we get it together. So they got the idea, and they take it to Alf, and they say, you want to help us with this? He says, yeah, but of course you're going to need a special guest. Like, well, I know a guy who knows a guy who knows a guy who knows Jack Kirby. And they said, oh, you know Jack? He's like, yeah, we know Jack. And so they reach out to the friend of the friend of the friend, and they get in touch with Jack. And they say, hey, we're putting together an event, which was called California's Golden State Comic Book Convention. It wasn't San Diego Comic-Con because San Diego wasn't a readily known city at the time. They used the allure of the golden state of California to lure people in. And of course, this was 1969, so they said, okay. And so they drove up to Thousand Oaks to meet with Jack Kirby. And Jack Kirby just loved all these kids. And he loved them so much that he drew them as characters in the Fourth World as the San Diego Five-String Mob to fight Superman. And so that that came out in 1970. So they became this really corny gang of supervillains. And Jack agreed to be their guest of honor at the first show. And the first San Diego Comic-Con attracted, roughly about 250 people. And then the second year, it attracted 500 people. And then Jack Kirby said to the kids, I mean, look at how big the convention is. Look at how big. It's already doubled in size. Just you wait. This convention is going to be the biggest thing in the world. It's going to be so big it'll take over the entire town. It'll be the place where Hollywood comes to show off the movies they made last year and to find the movies they're going to make next year. And they all just laughed at Jack. But of course, Jack was the Nostradamus of comics. He had vision. He knew. And of course, his vision came true once again. And so how that relates to San Diego Comic-Con is in 2009, after the 40th, Comic-Con International brought together a bunch of those founding fathers. And they all had such a wonderful time together. They thought, why don't we try to do something that is reminiscent of the old times? A convention experience that's not so overwhelming and huge. And it's not like I don't love San Diego Comic-Con. I've been going every year since 1994. I live for San Diego
Wow, you beat
Comic-Con.
me. My first year was 96.
Yep. I still remember my 96 Comic-Con quite well. That was my favorite one, but that's a sidetrack.
I'll touch base on that too.
And the thing is, they decided, let's put together a convention experience that's like the old days. Because when you look at the guest list of like the 1973 convention, if you go to the elcortezhotel.com, it's like there's Stan Lee, there's Jack Kirby, there's Charles Schultz, there's like all these people. Just if I could be a fly on the wall with those kind of people around, and it's just like gods of comics and animation are just in that room, and you could just go up and hang out with them, and there's less than 300 people there, like it just boggles the mind that they were that accessible. So Comic Fest was cultivated with that experience in mind. So the first year started off in 2012 with Murphy Anderson, who is the artist on the first issue of Justice League. He's a living legend, and he agreed to be the guest of honor. And it was taking its baby steps in the first year, and then the next year they picking up the pace a little bit. Okay, you're getting a little better, and then third year, I came on board as a volunteer. I was no longer an attendee. And I said, okay, you're getting pretty good. And then by the fourth year, that's where I felt, helping out with things and, giving it direction on it. Because because the idea was there, but the execution was not. And I helped a lot with the execution in bringing it together for what it needed to be. The small, intimate environment, but with too many cool things to do. And the fourth year was the year where San Diego Comic Fest finally became the convention it needed to be. And then we took it to the fifth year. This was the year where we celebrated the centennial of Jack Kirby. Everybody just had a phenomenal time. And we had a little icing on the cakes. We celebrated the 25th anniversary of the X-Men cartoon. And after that, the series creators of the X-Men cartoon were just blowing up. They're getting taken all over the world now. But I'm happy to say that we started it there. And people at the 5th San Diego Comic Fest, people were just coming up to me. It's like they were like practically tears in their eyes. I can't decide if I want to go to this panel, this panel, or this panel. There's too many good things going on at once. I said, what? That sounds like a pretty good problem to have.
Absolutely.
That makes for
Yeah, and so it was just a wonderful experience. And then last year was our 6th year, where our theme was the 200th anniversary of Frankenstein. I really couldn't believe that no one else was really doing 200 years of Frankenstein. It's so important in science fiction and literature and all over the board. And we had a great celebration of 200 years of Frankenstein. For our guest of honor, we brought out Karen Berger, who was the former editor-in-chief of Vertigo, who helped pretty much cultivate the British invasion of comic creators and start up the Vertigo line of things. And she was just, she was 26 when she started as an editor at Vertigo. Wow. It just boggles the mind. Well, she was DC. It was before it was Vertigo, and then she took that in. But we also brought in Sarah Karloff, Boris Karloff's daughter, to talk about her father as Frankenstein and also her father as not Frankenstein. So that was a really cool thing there, too.
That was probably pretty cool.
Yeah,
it's so cool
that is right up. Why weren't you there, Alan?
I didn't know about it. Yeah. I was working 2 jobs, remember?
Yeah.
Barely alive.
Yeah.
And it's just so awesome that I get to help cultivate an experience for the fans of comics, science fiction, animation, and film that brings out the best in it. And I oversee programming and everything, and I will not approve a panel unless I know this will be entertaining. Because, there's some conventions out there, I won't name names or anything. Sometimes you could tell the organizers are kind of doing it for themselves, and it's like, but no one else really likes that sort of thing. And it's just like, it's just really self-serving, and I don't want to do that. Well, I'm doing that for the Spider-Man panel, but at least I know I'm not the only one out there that likes the Spider-Man cartoon. I'm just the biggest fan. But of course, it's not like this, and of course, it's not like the Spider-Man cartoon, didn't impact our society as we know. Nobody had touched Blade the Vampire Hunter in 20 years until the Spider-Man cartoon came around, and then what do you know? 2 years later, he's got his own show. He's got his own movie, and then the Hollywood execs are like, wait a second. An unknown superhero actually worked in a movie? Imagine if we used the characters they do know. And here we are.
Yeah, Sony still missed the boat.
Yeah. Yeah, from what I was heard, I had read something recently that...
Sony could have had it all.
Yeah, Sony could have had it all.
Mm-hmm. They said, nah, we just want Spider-Man.
Yeah, nothing else. Thanks, bye.
And now how many other studios own anything now that Fox is going back to, to Disney?
Universal still has a chunk in the Hulk.
Yeah.
I'm not sure the details there, but that's why you don't see solo Hulk movies.
From my understanding is they own the rights to a Hulk solo movie, but he's allowed to be in an ensemble cast. And I'm just pulling that out of recent memory.
That's what I know. That's really all I do know about it. It's just, I think Hulk works best as a solo character, but I'm happy to see him, bruising it up with Thor and whatnot and all that. So, I don't know the details of the deal, so I won't speak on things I don't know.
Fair enough. So what are some of the highlight panels? What are the dates? Let's go there real quick.
Okay, so San Diego Comic Fest is coming up from March 7th to the 10th, and it will be at the Four Points Sheraton on Arrow Drive here in San Diego, California. And first off, I would like to announce our guest of honor. He is the world's greatest living cartoonist, Mr. Sergio Aragones.
Nice.
He will be celebrating his 60th year of Mad Magazine with us.
Very cool.
Count him, 60 years at Mad. Sergio is the living legend. I don't know a single man alive or woman alive or child alive or anyone alive who does not like the work of Sergio Aragones. He is just El Maestro. He's just so amazing and everything. And I'm so honored that he accepted our invitation. And you can't get a bad story out of Sergio. He's always got a story to tell. And our theme this year is actually going to be 50 years of the moon landing. Now, You might say, like, oh, wait, hold on. But that doesn't really sound like, too comic-y. Or really, does it?
Space
why did the Fantastic Four go into outer space? Look at, like, the entirety of the jet age becoming the space age. That influenced so much creative material around it, from Fantastic Four, Star Trek, and all this stuff. There's an entire decade where everything was dedicated to space covers and that sort of thing. And the moon landing demonstrates that point where science fiction became science fact.
It's a catalyst for information.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so and now they're like, okay, we got this. Let's move into the 70s where we can all do blaxploitation and kung fu stuff.
Hey.
Yeah. Luke Cage and Shang-Chi next. And Iron Fist and what. But we do have some other great guests coming on board. We do have another Golden Age comic guest. There's not a whole lot of them around these days, but we have Mr. Alan Bellman, who used to do Captain America back in the 40s.
Very cool.
And he's part of Timely.
He was part of Timely. And he is coming to our show. He is coming out and about for it.
Wow.
Our science fiction guest of honor, because we always embrace the science fiction side of things, because the original San Diego Comic-Con was about comics, science fiction, animation, film. Our science fiction guest of honor is Mr. William Nolan, who co-authored Logan's Run back in the day. Nice. And he's pretty much done more than 2,000 pieces of fiction, be it non-fiction articles and whatnot. Hugo Award, that sort of thing. It's like Bram Stoker Award, and even a World Horror Grand Society Master in 2015. And he's into his 90s. He's still writing.
Oh, wow.
So
that's impressive.
We're pretty happy to have him on board for this.
No kidding.
And we are celebrating a dealer guest of honor, Mr. Bud Plant, who made it through 49 consecutive San Diego Comic-Cons. That's no easy task.
No.
And our fan guest of honor, Bill Shelley, because we also celebrate the fans. And, of course, I mentioned that 25th anniversary of the Spider-Man cartoon, so I won't have to go into that again, because that's what we're celebrating. And we've also got some living legends of animation coming back to the show. We are celebrating the three tuners. Tony Benedict, who used to write the Jetsons and Top Cat and Flintstones, Huckleberry Hound, Yogi Bear, Magilla Gorilla. He is coming to the show.
Nice.
Very cool.
He wrote the Jetsons, so that goes in a little bit with the
cool.
jet age on things.
Yeah.
And then we've also got Jerry Eisenberg, who was a producer for Jetsons, Huckleberry Hound, Johnny Quest, Wacky Races, Peter Potamus, a lot of that, OG Hanna-Barbera stuff. And then Willie Ito, who is coming back to San Diego Comic Fest once again. Willie Ito, you might know him as the creator of Hong Kong Phooey. We had a great time with Willie last year. He's always the life of the party. And Willie also animated that scene from Lady and the Tramp with the spaghetti scene.
Really?
He animated
Interesting.
that. So it's really
pretty iconic scene.
It's a pretty cool iconic scene. And I will let this be the first place that I announce it. We are bringing Man of Action Studios. So Joe Kelly, Joe Casey, Steven Seagal, and Duncan Rollo. So if you're a Ben 10 fan, a Big Hero 6 fan, or a 90s Deadpool fan, we got that crew coming here.
Wow.
Sweet. And then we also bring in James Robinson. You might know him from Starman, which will be celebrating 25 years. And Steve Rude will be coming to the show. Anyone like Nexus? Yeah, Steve Rude, or World's Finest, some of those great shows. Chris Ryle, who you might know as President, Publisher, and Chief Creative Officer of IDW Publishing, is going to be coming to the show. So congratulations on his very big promotion. I couldn't think of a better guy for the job.
Nice.
Anyone here like Too Much Coffee Man? Because Shannon Wheeler's coming to the show. And Jonathan Mayberry, who did V-Wars, and he's won 5 Bram Stoker Awards. He's coming to the show as well. Mark Schultz of Prince Valiant and Xenozoic Tales is coming to the show. Who else am I thinking? Oh, Bill Stout, who pretty much did concept art for every single 80s movie you love, is coming to the show as well. Scott Shaw, the legendary cartoonist, is coming back. Mike Royer, who used to be Jack Kirby's inker back in the day, and of course did decades worth of Winnie the Pooh commercial art, is coming to the show. He's always the life of the party. Ladies, ask him find him at the bar and ask him for a Winnie the Pooh sketch. He'll always do it for you on a bar napkin. It's always a wildly entertaining sight. And we've also got Buzz Dixon coming back for our G.I. Joe fans, Thunder the Barbarian, Transformers, and whatnot. Oh, and did I mention that Floyd Norman, who used to work with Walt Disney back in the day, who got his start on a little movie called Sleeping Beauty, is coming back to the show again. So we've got a wildly entertaining group of people coming to the show.
And diverse.
It's like all of it overcross animation, science fiction, living legends, contemporary people, all this sort of thing. It's so fun to be able to put together a show that's in an intimate environment and just make it work. It's such an amazing dream come true. And it's just something I do out of passion. And I love just seeing these people just have the time of their lives. That's what it matters to me.
I know people can't see your face here, but you can hear it in your voice, man. You are unbelievably passionate about this.
Yeah.
And it's exciting to see, man. And like I said,
It's infectious.
I'm embarrassed that I haven't got to go, but we'll be here that week. Is it a Friday, Saturday, Sunday?
It's actually a Thursday through Sunday event.
Okay.
So there's going to be and there might be something pending Wednesday night too. Local institution might want to help out with a party. I can't say just yet. But Thursday night, the party gets started Thursday night for people who have full weekend membership. So we're going to have a nice party where you can chat and hang out with the creators and whatnot, and just get a set for the show, get a feel for things and that sort of thing. Just test your water, sort of like preview night at Comic-Con.
Yeah, yeah, very cool.
All right.
So I mean, I'm definitely we'll definitely be there.
Like, I'm going.
Well, like I said, I've been wanting to go for a couple years now, and I just haven't been able to make it because
Haven't pulled the trigger.
damn kids. And
Those money
Don't worry, there's a
suckers.
lot of stuff there for the kids. I think they'll enjoy it too.
what do you got for the kids?
Well, they said Ben 10. All
Oh,
of them
yeah.
love
Ben
Ben
10.
10.
But I mean, just seeing all the stuff, and once a year I take comics into my oldest son's class for the last 3 years, and because I feel like it's a real easy way for kids that don't like to read. And this last year it was cool enough that a former guest, Robert Kirkman, gave us some Super Dinosaur books.
Oh, nice.
So we got to give a Super Dinosaur book to every single kid in my son's class. And I got a message from one of the moms, and she said, "I can never get my son to read. I can never get him to read. He read it in one day." And it's a trade, so it was 4 or 5 issues. So he sat down and read the whole thing, and I don't think people realize how beneficial it is to get these into kids' hands.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. I learned to read on comics. I'm a personal example of it, and I developed a lifelong love of it. And guess what? I'm one of those weirdos that will read comics in public. I mean, there are people like that. It's weird. I know. I will read my single issues and stuff. And
You don't run to the car and hide in your car and read
I don't
them?
hide in my car. It's like, no. It's like I'm one of those creepy guys that does it in front of everyone. But I'll just be reading comics in public or whatnot. I'll be reading an issue of Spider-Man or something, and then when I'm done with it, I'll see some kids near me. It's like, all right, here you go. And every once in a while, the parents will be like, "You're giving my child this filth to read?" I said, the keyword here is read.
You've had that happen? Somebody has said that? That is terrible.
Still,
I can. There are people that I say clap. I can clap back. It's like, would you prefer your kids stay at home playing Fortnite?
Right?
Ugh,
Fortnite.
the bane of our existence right now.
It's everywhere. It's everywhere. Chuckle it up. When you have kids, it'll be another game.
Okay.
Yes. He's like,
Yeah, it's important to get it into. I still have to do that this year. I still have to pick up some comics to take into Parker's class. Year before it was I got
we get some Teen Titans.
I got Teen Titans and Spider-Man and Sonic, and
Better be Teen Titans Go. Teen Titans Go is my bae.
yeah, Teen Titans Go is
It's so
excellent.
good.
Yes, it is. I don't know why people hate it. I love it.
It's great. It's
so funny.
hilarious. The movie
Everyone's
was
like,
awesome.
There's not the original ones. Like,
Who cares?
Who cares? It's better. It's like you're just upset because it's canceled. And this show came out 6 years after. It's funny. It's different, and it's like they're so mean to each other. That's
That's the
why
point.
it's funny.
It's funny
It's
when
relevant.
when the movie came out. He kept posting about it nonstop on Facebook, and I'd like to just go on his Facebook feeds for people that are getting upset and just poke the bear and be like, I would just add on to all the Facebook. You went a lot.
I know. I loved it, and I defended this movie. And the even crazier thing is, when I find other kindred spirits who like Teen Titans Go, there is one, the most unlikely source in the entire world. Howard Chaykin loves Teen Titans Go. He even ranked Teen Titans Go to the movies up with Citizen Kane. And I'm just saying, we bond over the show. Howard Chaykin, of course, is the most foul-mouthed man ever. And he is so wildly entertaining at conventions because he just curses up a storm in front of everyone. And to find that he is a huge fan of Teen Titans Go, when he doesn't really even read a whole lot of, contemporary superhero comics, but he loves that show, I just think that's just the funniest thing.
It's because it's a fresh take on something that's so ancient, and I think that's what makes it so fun.
And it's not taking itself
makes it-
serious.
Gives it a wider
harkens
appeal,
back
it's
to
tongue-in-cheek.
Warner Brothers animation shows I like. It's like a modern day Animaniacs. That's the way I look at it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And then there's I don't know if you watch The Walking Dead, but whenever I see Carrie Payton,
Oh,
I think
God.
it's
Oh,
who plays
yeah.
Ezekiel, all I
Oh,
can
yeah.
hear is Cyborg. It's all I can hear. It's just
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't even realize that he was the voice
Yeah.
of Cyborg.
Yeah,
Okay,
he is-
because I don't watch Walking Dead. I haven't watched since they were like in the jail or whatnot. It's like I still read the comics and the hardcovers every now and then, but like I typically do not do a whole lot of comic book TV show aside from Teen Titans Go because it's on TV 23 hours a day and I love it.
Yeah.
But I actually do not really do live action superhero stuff. This comes as a shocker to some people. You don't watch it? It's like, no. It's like, because for me, I think superheroes work great in comics. They work great in the animated series. They work great in the big budget film. But when you're grounding them in reality, these ridiculous characters just kind of don't work for me. And it's not like Marvel stuff. It's DC stuff too. It's just not my cup of tea. I understand there's people that like it, but it's just not for me.
Yeah.
For me, there's only one live action superhero TV show that I could really get into, and that was Daredevil.
I was just going to say, what are your feelings on Daredevil?
Daredevil is great because it does not feel like a superhero TV show. It feels like a crime drama.
Yeah.
And they did, a wonderful take on things. And for me, my favorite character on Daredevil is actually, for me, it's Kingpin.
He's excellent.
Oh, he's
excellent.
great.
D'Onofrio.
Vincent D'Onofrio is
Vincent
amazing
D'Onofrio is awesome.
actor.
And I seem to be the only person who kind of realizes it because, I've got an affliction myself. I love the fact that they made him autistic. You look at him closely.
Yeah, he has tics.
Yeah. He has these nervous tics. He's nervous around people. He doesn't make eye contact. He wears the same thing every day. He goes into a repetitive motion every morning.
She pointed that out the first time in the first season.
He's uncomfortable around, and it's like, wait, you're actually using a villain with a disability against a hero with a disability. I think that's a brilliant thing.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with Drax and Guardians.
A lot of people associate with him with being autistic.
I just think he's awesome.
Drax?
Yeah.
I'm sad to say that I haven't watched the third season of Daredevil yet, and it's because, like you said, there's just so much content.
I haven't seen it either.
Yeah, there's so much content, and
we're getting stuck.
And we were getting stuck because we were trying to watch all of them in order, and we got stuck on. We're on Iron Fist season 2.
Well, we got stuck on Jessica Jones second season.
Yeah, well, Jessica
that was
season.
rough.
Yeah.
I couldn't even get through the first season of Jessica Jones.
Well, Kilgrave was so great.
David Tennant was excellent in that.
I mean, I tried with Jessica Jones, but then it got to the point where I realized, I'm half a season in and I'm only watching it for Luke Cage. And it's like, just because Bendis left he put such a high mark on things when he did Alias back in the day. That was such an incredible book. I loved that book, and it was so good. And I felt like just Jessica Jones was just a watered down version of that, and it didn't have enough characters to play with, because I liked the whole detective in a gritty Marvel universe investigating things behind their back and that sort of thing. As Bendis, there was that point where from 2000, 2005, when he was just the best writer in comics, doing Ultimate Spider-Man, doing Alias, doing Powers, and of course Daredevil. And that was his greatest strength as a writer, doing these street-level characters in solo title where they can let dialogue go for them. And that's just like the golden era of Bendis. And then afterwards, for me, when getting into Bendis that era, I was 14 years old because I was a Spider-Man fan. I got an Ultimate Spider-Man. Ultimate Spider-Man was my jam because all of a sudden, oh my God, there's another 14-year-old Peter Parker just like me, and he's got my haircut too, and he's got girl problems and stuff like that. But he eventually gets a girlfriend, and no girls want to talk to me. And I wish I had a red-haired girlfriend as a freshman in high school, but nope. But I got Peter to back me up.
Yeah, that's good.
Well, back on the Spider-Man real quick. Having been a lifelong Spider-Man, what would you say is a defining moment for you, or a moment in Spider-Man's varied tapestry of stories that really resonates with you?
There are many moments that resonate with me as a Spider-Man reader. As I mentioned, the early 2000s was a golden age of Spider-Man for me because Marvel had been through a rough patch. And things were going, not so well. And so there needed to be some changes in order. And the changes were brought on by Joe Quesada. And Joe, got rid of the creative teams around, brings in Axel Alonso to oversee the editorial of the Spider-Man titles. He says, I want everyone gone, but I want John Romita Jr. to stay. We like you. You got the New York scapes down. Now, and it's not like there's anything wrong with John Byrne or Howard Mackie. In fact, my all-time favorite comic, not even just Spider-Man comic, is a Howard Mackie comic. That's Peter Parker's Spider-Man 75, which I read every Halloween night on ever since 1996. Do you remember what happened in this issue?
You
No.
have to remind me.
This was the death of Ben Reilly.
Ah,
The return of Norman Osborn and the death of Ben Reilly.
That's right,
Because
yeah.
before it was, at issue 74, it was just Spider-Man. But they had to bring it back in, and if so, it's Peter Parker Spider-Man. So that was, for me, it's my all-time favorite comic because it's a worthy send-off to Ben Reilly. It's returning the Green Goblin after he's been gone for 20 years, and it's just a powerful story for me. And that's why it resonates for me still as an all-time favorite comic. But going through motions for me on what are the definitive things that, are really impactful for me as Spider-Man. The 2000s really represented that era because, I read Spider-Man just nonstop through that. But when J. Michael Straczynski took over the reins of Amazing Spider-Man Volume 2, number 30, when Peter's just climbing up the wall, just takes a moment to rest, and he finds another old man next to him who also has spider powers. That dude Ezekiel. I'm like, wait, what the hey is this?
yeah.
And
That was some of my
he
favorite
says,
stuff.
You ever think you might not be alone? You notice you're fighting a lot of rhinos and scorpions and octopuses and vultures and a lot of animal stuff. You think that might be for a reason? And I'm like, mind blown. And so you're taking stuff in the mythology and you're applying it to something bigger. And the thing is, we were entering this new golden age of Spider-Man. So like I say about Ultimate Spider-Man, I had a young, youthful, high school age Peter Parker that I could relate to myself. But within the pages of Amazing Spider-Man, with J. Michael Straczynski and John Romita Jr., what they were doing, they had that long-form, overarching Spider-Man story that was kind of leading toward that beginning, middle, end of like that long epic. Now, you may not like the long epic. You say like, man, where's my supervillains at? Where's my supervillains at? You had Spectacular Spider-Man for that, with Paul Jenkins and Humberto Ramos. You had those incredibly deep-cut stories of classic villains, but they were going through such weird trauma and weird psychological stuff. There was that story where the symbiote leaves Venom and Spider-Man finds Brock and saying, Spider-Man, I have cancer, and the symbiote was the only thing keeping me alive. I have adrenal gland cancer. That night in the Bell Tower, I was going to kill myself, and that thing has been keeping me alive. And now it's left me because I'm just a shattered, withered husk of a man. You also had that other story in Spectacular about the lizard, where Dr. Connors finally admitted he was finally in control of the lizard persona the entire time. He just used it as a means to an end. That's why I was always stealing these sort of like lab gear and all this tech equipment. I was just lazy and I didn't want to apply for funding. I just, took all this stuff for myself and I could blame, because I knew I could blame it on the lizard. It's like, those are some really crazy good stories.
Yeah.
Paul Jenkins really hit on the psychological. And then there was Mark Millar on Marvel Knights Spider-Man, and that was just crazy. Yeah. And it was so fun. It was so good. I mean, like, having Spider-Man fight Absorbing Man, and then Absorbing Man just, like, getting rewarded by the Owl with a chunk of coke, snorting it. He becomes cocaine. Owl comes in with, like, fans and blows him over the wall. This will sell for millions in street value. Like, Millar, you are crazy.
Yeah, he gets away with writing some crazy stuff.
He got some crazy stuff. And so that was, for me, that was my golden years of Spider-Man. But sadly, not all things come to the finale that I like. And of course, we hearken to December of 2007, where we got Amazing Spider-Man 545 by Joe Quesada and J. Michael Straczynski. Joe's credits come first on this. In fact, I took issue with this issue. In fact, even Straczynski took issue with this issue to the point where he actually formally asked his name be removed from it, but in the end he kept it on because he's not trying to sabotage Joe or anything for what that is. But needless to say, the events of One More Day, I was not thrilled with those.
Sure.
I was not thrilled with those.
I
was not particularly thrilled, but
I
like
agree.
a good...
I was going to say...
I
wasn't a fan of the
Yeah.
I'm not a big fan of that. And for me, that was like a moment where I just kind of just said, all the stuff that I've been reading, all these, literally the past 20 years of Spider-Man, it's just gone. It's just gone. Didn't happen. And, it just felt like I just felt so empty after that because, as you can tell, I'm a guy who really, really dedicates his life to Spider-Man.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that there's a whole thing of like, guys, oh, you're so butthurt about this whole thing. I'm like, but, I mean, I kept reading Spider-Man for a little while, but it just felt different to me. And so it was the first time in my life where I kind of just took a back burner. But it was at a point that was good for me because I really started changing my perspective on things. I started reading beyond Marvel. I started reading independent books and that sort of thing because I realized, what, the stuff I love could easily be, taken away from me. There's this great quote I like from Paul Dini: "Don't fall in love with characters you don't own." And I think that happens a lot to us. Absolutely. Because we realize that these characters, after, Straczynski, after that whole thing happened, JMS said, you're a gardener. You look after the garden for a while, and then the next person comes in. So things were really cool, in the era of Spider-Man that I liked, but then there's a new era of Spider-Man. And, of course, there's a lot of people that say, well, I know it was off to a rough start, but it got better. And, of course, I did give the stories on there later on by, like, Dan Slott. I actually enjoyed Superior Spider-Man. I thought that was actually a really cool take on things. And I'm not saying that there's bad story. There's not like there's not bad, only bad stories coming out of this. There's some good stuff. There's some not so good stuff. But the thing I like, and nowadays, I'm happy to say that my favorite story coming out that I read today is Amazing Spider-Man by Nick Spencer and Ryan Ottley.
Yeah.
Because we've got a Ryan Ottley original right up on the wall.
Oh, snap. Nice.
That's
now,
Oliver Grayson's first flight.
Like, when I heard that Dan Slott was finally ending his 10-year run, I'm like, oh, it's fun. 10 years are up. I'm like, you know what? I like that. I like the sound of that Nick Spencer and Ryan Ottley team. I was like, you know what? I'll give it a chance. And I read that first issue.
It was great.
It was a good issue.
It's a lot of fun.
And the thing is, like, all right, when I got to that final page, just Spencer, Ottley, you sold me. The fact of seeing Peter and Mary Jane kiss for the first time in a decade.
Yeah.
It's good stuff.
You got me. You got me right in the feels. You got my guy back to my girl. And I just love that story because within the first issue, you could tell they did it right. They're not just one more day, it's magic, we don't have to explain it.
Yeah.
In that first issue, he acknowledges Superior Spider-Man. It's like, your brain was thinking. It's like, you're plagiarized. So, boom, he loses his PhD. He's grounded again. It's like, I mean, I like a 27-year-old down on his luck Peter Parker. I don't really like Peter Parker being a billionaire. So I had some problems with Parker Industries. I mean, I like Peter being a scientist, but like not so
successful.
More mid-level scientist.
I disagree. I felt like the Parker luck had been keeping him down. It was kind of nice to see him get a little taste of success.
Get a win.
It's nice to see him get a taste of success, but just like sometimes you take it too far. I do like character development, and I do like seeing people go through things. But there's this great quote I love about writing superhero comics from Julia Schwartz. Create the illusion of change without anything ever changing. Mm-hmm. But of course, things should change. Characters should evolve. And of course, it's nice to see that with the current Amazing Spider-Man, they have grounded Peter Parker back to the Peter Parker that everyone can agree on. And everybody is loving the book. And it's so nice and it's so fun and it's so enjoyable. And you could tell that Nick Spencer, he's writing it for like 90s kids like us. He's like, this is Gaunt, or is he Robot Master, or this sort of thing. He comes back every sort of years, tries to be the big badass villain, but then he fails miserably and he just goes back to being a loser. And he's like, here's the Tri-Sentinel. Remember this from 1991? This was a cool thing. And he's just like, and instead of just making these, these so-called alpha tier villains that were supposed to be the end all for thing, he's just turning them into jokes and disposable story things to move things forward, and it's hilarious and I love it.
Yeah.
And Ottley's artwork on the book is awesome. I'm a big fan.
I'm a big fan of Ryan Ottley. I've only read the first dozen issues of Invincible, but it is solid stuff. I know you're looking at me all I know I need to catch up and do more on Invincible too, but the thing is, I'm really loving Ryan Ottley on Amazing Spider-Man. I would the book comes out twice a month, so I know they have to switch between him and Humberto Ramos, but it's just so much fun. I prefer Ottley on it to Ramos because it's just he gets it. He gets the humor and that sort of thing, and so it's just a whole lot of fun. I'm really enjoying Amazing Spider-Man again these days. It feels good to say that Amazing Spider-Man is my favorite book once again for the first time in over a decade.
Take a few steps back. With Spider-Man being one of your favorites, you said when you stopped reading Spider-Man, you started reading some more independent books. What are some of your favorite independent books out right now?
Some of my favorite independent books. A book I always go out of my way to sing the praises of is Marine Man by Ian Churchill. This book, I know, I always call it the best book you've never read because I feel like no one's
I've never read it.
But when I first read the first issue of Marine Man in December of 2010, it just looked really pretty and really polished and really cool. And so I read that first issue, and of course I'd pile it on top of my stack of comics that I read for the week. And as I'm going through my stack, I read Marine Man, and then I did something I've never done before in my life.
You read it again?
I read it again. I have never been so absolutely impressed by a comic that I felt the need to read it again. And of course, if you're a child of the 90s like me, of course you recognize the name Ian Churchill from Cable and X-Force and X-Men and Deadpool and that sort of thing. He was just one of those Jim Lee clones back in the day. But on Marine Man, he was able to, as a creator on book, he was able to do his own style. He's given so much freedom and so much creativity and so wonderful and so lively and so action-packed. In fact, Marine Man actually, after only 2 issues, was actually Eisner nominated for Best New Series.
For 2 issues?
It took 2 issues to get that nomination.
That's impressive.
Wow.
And, of course, after that, at the 2011 Comic-Con, I formed a friendship with Ian. I told him I am your absolute biggest fan. Of course, I didn't, rush up to his booth and just push everyone out of the way. That's unprofessional. I waited till everyone was done. I said, I respect the other fans, but I'm your biggest fan. And I have a piece of original art from Marine Man hanging on every wall in my house.
Wow.
I own the cover to #1, the Atlantis double-page spread, and I still want more. It's such a fun book. So I have to recommend Ian Churchill's Marine Man as one of the books that I'm really enjoying these days. It's been a while since it, but go out and get the trade. Support this book. It's so much fun. And other books I've really been liking these days, I'm finding I love Scotty Young as a writer more than I like him as an artist.
Yeah, most people know him as an artist.
But books like Middle West and Bully Wars, these are great titles. Bully Wars is awesome. It's really funny, and the thing is, I heard he was doing it, so I picked it up. And I didn't realize, until issue 3 that he actually wasn't the artist. The artist who's on it is a dead ringer for his style, but still embodies the Scotty Young writing. So that's just showing that this man, who we know is a phenomenal artist, is a phenomenal writer on top of that. Of course, I Hate Fairyland is evidence of that, too. And then Middle West, while not so funny, embodies a more fantasy-oriented structure of things.
What is Middle West about?
Middle West. It's kind of hard to describe.
Because
So basically, it's about a boy who lives with a not-so-nice father in sort of a fantasy-oriented Midwest United States.
Okay.
Where, he leaves his father, who has the weird power to turn into a tornado. So there's sort of like a Wizard of Oz type thing going on there. And he hops on a train where he is almost eaten by homeless men who dress up in crow's skull things and finds a wizard and that sort of. And the thing is, it is a very hard to describe story.
I'm going to go buy this.
But it's actually pretty good. I just picked up the 3rd issue from SoCal Comics today. It's
I've been seeing it walking through there, and I'm like, what is this? And I saw it a few other places and being recommended.
Yeah, so I'm digging that. I've also been enjoying Hey Kids Comics by Howard Chaykin, which is a fictional retelling of comic history in the superhero business, jumping around back to, the 1930s, 1940s, and then, coming forward into today. I'm 4 issues deep on it, and I really enjoy this story. So, you can tell that there are characters that are basically Stan or basically Jack Kirby or Wally Wood, and it's not naming names, but it is showing you the struggles they had to deal with, and then finally gaining some recognition at events that appear to be New York Comic Con or San Diego Comic Con and this sort of thing, and it's really cool and really nice. I love comic history. I was once called the world's youngest comic book historian back in the day after after helping out with a PhD dissertation on superheroology in UC Santa Barbara. So, but I mean, that title held more power at 23 than it does at 33. So I try not to call myself the world's youngest comic book historian these days, because I'm getting old and a dad bod now. So,
I love comics and I read as much as I can, and I have a huge backlog too. But I'm dwarfed by the stuff that you can just spit out on a whim.
And this is just a whim, and I feel like I'm slacking on my studies too, just because life is just getting in the way. And, because I've been working as a World War II historian for the past 3 years, so I had to, and so it's like World War II, but now it's like I'm shifting my mind back into comic realm of things, and it feels good. It feels liberating. And while I like World War II, comics are my passion more. The downside of learning a whole lot about World War II is if there's like a Captain America flashback and I look at a scene, they got that plane wrong. They got that plane wrong. It's hard to suspend your disbelief.
Yeah. Right.
It's like, well, he's fighting against a dude who's flying and that sort of thing, but I can't understand why they would use that plane a year before it came out.
We were watching something on Netflix, and somebody took a hit to the head, and Alan, who's in the medical field, goes, "He wouldn't die from that." And I'm like, it's got to be shitty being you just watching movies and
knowing.
It's shitty watching medical shows. That's so, like I can't watch things like ER or House or Scrubs. At least they have the humor.
They did their homework.
No. The thing is, House was my favorite show back in the day, but I could never watch it with my dad around, because my dad is the medical director of San Diego. It's like 2 minutes into the episode, he's like, he's got this. I'm like, well, thanks for spoiling it, Dad. And he was never wrong.
Yeah.
He was never wrong.
That's got to be a bummer.
Yeah.
I want to go back again
Uh-oh.
because you said something that 1996 was your favorite Comic-Con. And obviously you have an impeccable memory. Why was it your favorite Comic-Con? I'll tell you why it was mine, but I want to hear your story. 96 was...
Let me hear why it was yours.
Back in the day, before Comic-Con was a big deal, they would advertise on buses, and they would advertise on like the local channels for these like really crummy commercials and stuff. And I saw it one day, and the way I got into comics was there was a place called All Star Cards, which was a sports place down the street from my house, and we walked there, and in the corner they had...
I remember, it was awesome. Flare Ultra.
Yep. Yeah. So I started collecting comic cards, and in the corner they had some comics, and they were just random comics. I started getting those, and then there was a kid that was a few years older than me down the street, and I used to do his chores, and he would pay me in Spider-Man comics. So I started seeing these advertisements for San Diego Comic-Con, and I begged my grandpa. I lived with my grandparents. I said, "Will you take me? Will you take me? Will you take me?" Finally, he said, "Yes, I'll take you." And I saved up, I think it was $20 or $30. When we got there, we bought our tickets, and he gave me double what I had. So I think I had $20, $30. He gave me another $20, $30. So I'm walking around this convention where nobody was walking around, like they are now. And I'm walking around as a big Spider-Man and Venom fan. I bought all the Lethal Protector books, being a big Venom fan. And that was my first Comic-Con, and I've gone every year since. And my wife has gone. When did you start going?
2004.
So she's been going since 2004, and my kids have both been going since they were born. So
before.
Yeah, while she was pregnant. So
yeah, the 1996 Comic-Con was my third San Diego Comic-Con. So the reason why it was so good for me, because it's one of those days, it was the first day that I ever called the best day of my life, because I remember waking up and my parents, we decided to take a staycation over at the Lowe's Coronado, which is that wonderful hotel on the Silver Strand. We woke up, and I remember watching two cartoons that morning. It was the Green Goblin episode of Spider-Man, the animated series, came on, and then I got to watch Ren and Stimpy. It was that one where they went to a new acromegalia, and then Stimpy was cursed by, it was Ren who was cursed by Tuesday the 17th, and those were just, some phenomenal episodes. Got breakfast, and then we took the boat across from Coronado over to San Diego Comic-Con. It's like, wow, taking the boat to Comic-Con. And of course, that was the year where Ben Reilly was still Spider-Man. And so Ben was still my guy. And that's where I first got the Ben Reilly Spider-Man action figure, where he had like the I guess they were like Nerf balls mounted to his back, and you could like squeeze a little thing and it would shoot out, and so I'd have him fight Carnage with that. And so I would just go around. It's like I completed the Planet of the Symbiotes epic from 1995 that year, because like you, I was a child of the 90s, and so I bought anything that had a symbiote on it. That was just how we were. It's just like if it had Venom or Carnage on it, we had to buy it because that's how we are.
It was true.
And, it was just the most wonderful time. And then I came back that night and had a nice lobster dinner at the Lowe's Coronado because...
Poor you.
Yeah, poor me. It's like, wow. Imagine like what other people are doing who don't go to Comic-Con. And so that was the first time I actually had the best day of my life. But, for Comic-Con for me, it's always been something special. And it's hard to believe that this is going to be my 25th Comic-Con. And you told your story of how you went to your first Comic-Con, so I'll tell mine real quick. I was, it's 1994, August, and I'm watching the X-Men cartoon, and all of a sudden I see a commercial on TV. Come to the San Diego Comic-Con. It's, like on this weekend. Dad, oh my God, that looks awesome. Can we go to that? Sure. So he takes me and my brothers. We all pile in the station wagon. We go from our house in Mission Hills. We drive to the convention center. We park there. We go inside. We buy passes. And I walk inside, and I'm just absolutely blown away. It's just everything in the universe that I loved in one spot. And it was just the coolest thing in the entire world. And I went over to the Marvel booth, which seemed larger than life at the time. And I was just so mesmerized by these red and blue pillars. And there were just stills and short animation sequences of that as of yet incompleted Spider-Man cartoon coming up. And they had a trading card line of Spider-Man Fleer set coming up, and they had these uncut sheets, and I was so mesmerized, and I had my uncut sheet of Spider-Man cartoon. I was like, whoa. And the Spider-Man card sheet, it was just signed by this old guy in front of me as I'm just walking around. I found that sheet a couple years ago. It's signed by some nobody named John Romita Sr.
Nice. First Comic-Con.
Wow.
And then afterwards, after I'm just mesmerized and so inspired and blown away, some guys were walking by and say, hey, you guys done with your badges? It's like, yeah, sure. And we pass off those guys. I'm like, wow. But none of that stuff is possible. Decide to go day of.
Yeah, you can't.
There.
Yeah.
Passes day of. Give your passes away. Like,
I think 96 was the first year I went by myself. My first con was 93 or 94. And I'd go with my dad, and after he got hurt, I would just take the trolley and go by myself because I was a little bit older. I was 11 or 12, but you could do that then.
You can still do that now. It's just not a good idea.
No.
I'm going to tell one more Comic-Con story, then we'll plug the dates for Comic Fest one more time, and then we'll get you out of here. Parker, who is our oldest, his first Comic-Con, which is interesting. I'll start the story. She can finish it because she's the end of the story. So it was when you could walk into panels, which is still not that way anymore. Well, sometimes you can.
kind of. Sometimes you get lucky.
So it was the Walking Dead comic panel before The Walking Dead was on TV, before it was big. So we go in and we sit in the back, and the panel's about to start, and I look to my right, and I don't think anything, and I look again, and there's Nick Frost and Simon Pegg sitting at the back of because they're big comic fans, and they're big Walking Dead fans. So I'm like, that's Simon Pegg and Nick Frost. And I'm like, I'm not going to bother him. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go get a picture. I didn't even want a picture with them. I just wanted proof that they were there. So I went over and I was like, can I take a picture? And they're like, yeah, just real quick. And so I took a picture and I went and sat down. And before the end of the panel, they get up and they wave, and Kirkman waves, and they leave. And Katrina was in the panel with me, but Parker was a baby, and he started to get fussy, so she left. So she went and was sitting in the hallway between whatever it was, CBDF or one of those smaller rooms. And so
I'm sitting in the hallway with my kid and keeping him happy. And someone comes up to me and says, oh, I'm missing my daughter. Can I play with your baby? And it's Simon Pegg. And I'm like, sure, have fun.
So Parker's first ever Comic-Con, he got to play with Simon Pegg.
So Robert comes out of the panel and he's like, you're never going to believe what happened. And I'm like, oh, what happened? And so he tells me the story of how he got a picture of Simon Pegg and Nick Frost. And I was like, oh, well, he came out here and played with Parker.
Yeah.
And he's like, well,
Better
you just
dad than
ruined...
you are.
He's like, you just way to ruin my story. And I was like, sorry.
So we're at above an hour already, huh?
Yes.
So that's usually
That
about what we
happens
do.
when you have me on, and I barely scratch the surface.
Oh, yeah.
Trust me, I can Spider-Man splain for days.
I was like, okay, we usually keep it pretty loose here. Even with Kirkman, we didn't put a bunch of, we don't have an agenda. We don't have a lot of questions. And I was like, I got to get a couple questions for him, but you just kind of went for it.
And not a bad way.
Not a bad
Not
way
a
at
bad
all.
way, but
Yeah.
you can tell it's like I do this because I love it. And now it's like, you let a fanboy help organize a convention. It's like, okay,
You should.
Should, yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, because I mean, you don't want to lose that disconnect of things. I think to some degree, you should have people who are incredibly passionate and knowledgeable about these events within it, because they just can't be just cash grabs. There's too much of that. No, we're not a cash grab. We're a 501c3 nonprofit. We disclose all our funds and that sort of things to Uncle Sam, so that sort of thing, and fast legal talk.
You want to plug the dates one more time before
All
we say
right, so
farewell?
yes, for one last time, for San Diego Comic Fest, we are going to be here in San Diego, March 7th through the 10th, with guest of honor Sergio Aragonis, celebrating 50 years of the moon landing. So folks from NASA, SpaceX, and a bunch of other spots will be
Chris
coming out.
would
So
love that.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
trust me, we got to hold on to space on stuff. But we're still focused toward comics, animation, science fiction, and film in this geeky stuff. So check us out online at www.sdcomicfest.org. That's www.sdcomicfest.org. Book your hotels, buy your tickets. It's going to be, wonderful. Like full weekend passes are just $50. I think, we offer active military discounts. Kids under 12 are free. And so, bring the whole family and whatnot. So we're going to have a wonderful, awesome time.
That's great, man. Thanks for coming by.
And thank you so much for having me.
Are you going to be Hobo Spider-Man again?
I might be. I'm going to try
Nice.
to lose the dad bod by then.
I liked it.
Yeah, it was good. It was good. That was a great movie. We can get into that.
Yeah.
But we've talked about it 4 weeks in a row because I like it so much.
Okay. I love it so much, too.
Yeah. All right. Well, that'll be this week's episode. Thanks again, and we are out.
That was fun.